Hey everyone, this is Mark Treichel with another episode of With Flying Colors. I'm excited today to be here with David Reed of Reed and Jolly. David, how are you today?
I am doing great, Mark, and it's a pleasure to be on. I appreciate it.
Yeah. I think a while back, maybe at the beginning of the year, end of last year, we chatted about collections and all the things that were going on related to NCUA's priority ladder on asset quality and had a really fun conversation around that. And of course, I've known you since my days at NCUA when you helped us on some strategic planning facilitation with our senior executives. Had a lot of
Back
fun
in the days.
back in the day, right? Yeah, boy, time flies, man. And you shot me a note about NCUA's succession planning rule coming up here, and I know you're out and about, and you're out right now getting ready to chat
That's
with.
exactly right. I'm in beautiful Maine for their volunteer conference, and it's a hot topic.
It is a hot topic, and one of the reasons it's hot is because January 1, NCUA's rule becomes
Absolutely. All
effective.
federally insured credit unions get on board.
All federally, that's feds and states all across the country, and you're out there helping them understand what it means and what it doesn't mean. So let's tee that up. There's the as we were chatting earlier, there's the paper of how do you build a policy
Right.
and all that, and then there's the reality of okay, what does that mean and how do we implement it? So where do you want to go first on that? You want to go with
Well, let's just start. Let's just start there. It's policy versus practice. And as you mentioned, so I roam the countryside working with credit unions all across the country. I'm a credit union kind of guy. And whether it's speaking at a conference or if it's my role for a number of credit unions, I'm the board's counsel. So not the corporate counsel, but I'm the counsel for the board. So attending board meetings, helping them with things. And so this topic comes up over and over again. And where I have seen a little bit, I would call a disconnect, would be that lots of people are okay. How to draft your policy. Here are the key components of it, and God bless them all. They're cutting out of the executive summary of the rule and just giving it to you. And then I will see people when they begin to talk about the nuts and bolts. It is typically focused on one of two areas, and they're both related. One is going to be executive retention. That is the CEO and going beyond, and I know you'll get a kick out of this little gallows humor, but going beyond the hit by a bus scenario, right? For, okay, who's your number two and what happens in an emergency situation? Going beyond that, career pathing, identifying the sets of skills and all that. And then the other bucket is you have a lot of people out there now, they talk about golden handcuffs, right? They talk about split dollars. They talk about the various plans that you can utilize in order to attract and retain people. And if you have lightning in a bottle with the CEO, first of all, God bless you. You want to make sure that this 50 something CEO stays with you for a while. So you implement those items, and people will talk about that and talk about it's an investment and all these other things. And one of the things that I see that's lacking over and over again is okay, let's talk about volunteers. All right, and we'll get to this a little bit, but you've been in a number of boardrooms. I've been in a number of boardrooms. Typically, when you look around, shall we say, most boards are stable.
stable.
And
Stable. That's a
that's
glass
a,
half
shall we
full.
say, a euphemism. And so what I say is that everybody's talking about the policy or the paper, and very few people are talking about the practice, about it's the dark side of succession planning. So I think that's a good place to tee it up.
Very good. So the paper, you got to have the policy. The regulation goes who it covers. There was some changes in who it covered. And on the executive side, it's interesting because as I look at it as a former examiner, former executive at NCUA, I was always about this could be done via a letter to credit unions versus a regulation, but I didn't view it as okay, what are the tools that are going to allow me to keep my executives around because there's pay and compensation and benefits, which to me is I guess I hadn't thought of it that way, but of course, if you're trying to retain them and you're going to have succession planning and
Yeah.
you want to have a good number two in line, you got to pay the number two. And I get that side of it, and I guess I looked at it from the side of on that side of it was the smaller credit unions. Sometimes they have the CEO slash manager, and then that's the highest paid person, and they can't really afford a good number two, and that creates some issues, which I think is maybe the lens of a Todd Harper, former NCAA board member, is you need to. There's too many mergers. when the CEO retires, there's nobody in line.
Well,
How are you
that's
going to do
exactly
that?
right. And as a matter of fact, I believe that Todd had said that at the meeting that this was launched. He said that, of course, the NCUA, as part of their mission, they want to look at the stability of leadership and all of that. And so they did the root cause analysis of a lot of different mergers, and they found, especially at smaller shops, that the reason for a good number of these mergers was the fact that there was no number two. There was no good succession
Right.
plan. And he also went so far as to mention, while it is a bit rarer, but I've certainly seen it. You have a 5-person board, and suddenly three of them kind of look around and say, you know what, I'm done. I am done. We're all of a certain age. Our CEO, our manager's 10 years younger. We're not even going to give an option. We always get invited. And you know how this works too. We always get invited to lunch at the annual meeting. And that other credit union says, you know what? How would you guys like to have a 3-year reign as an advisory board for us? And we'll just merge into you guys. We'll keep all your employees. And next thing, we have another business unit that's gone. So it is. I sometimes compare it to 701.4, which came about, I think, in 2007 or 2008. Talks about board duties and authorities. The reason that came about. I mean, let's face it, NCUA has been around since whatever, 70, 71. And it took until 2008 to get this rule. Why? Because when we first met, I still call it the recent unpleasantness. It's the
Right.
corporate credit union issues, mortgage-backed securities, and things like that. But you had all those credit unions that failed. And in the after action report, of course, it's done as a regular part as the manager of the National Credit Union Share Insurance Fund. The NCUA found overwhelmingly that a lot of boards weren't being active enough. They
Right.
were not asking the proper questions. They did not understand risk appetite. And a good part of that was, ta-da, not a good enough reading of the financials, especially trend analysis. And so what happened, 701 specifically puts that out. And that's where we are in succession planning. I think it was hit dead on that it's an issue. The smaller credit union, it goes without saying, which of course, anytime somebody says that, especially a lawyer, we have to say it. But so a smaller shop, the manager's been there for 25 years, maybe longer, maybe been there since she was a teller,
Right.
and she's been running it. It's her life. It is her youngest child. and the number two who's been there for, let's say, 10 years, loves the credit union, committed to it, loves number one, but has no desire for her life path to be what the manager's path is. So if somebody asks her what to do, is that something you want to do? No, I'll be number two.
Right.
Or the next thing, and maybe this is going into too much detail, is that number two gets it automatically, and either they're not well suited for it, or the board comes in and says, we'll give you a 10% bump from where you are. And that should be really good. It's like, wait a second, what I was before was operations, and now I'm everything. And suddenly it doesn't end well.
And now when the alarms go off, it's me that has to go in on Saturday morning,
And
right?
there you go. I made a joke about that today. I made a joke about being called in with the credit union with less than 24 hours notice. And the opening line was, and I won't even mention his name, I'll just say Rhode Island's own, who did the wicked Kennedy impression. He was I think the associate regional director in charge of supervision. And the board chair said, they've asked for a meeting. They don't want our CEO there. What does that sound like? And I said, bad news. And I see that look on your face, and only people that have been through that. And I go out and just meet with the board and talk to them about a bunch of things, including succession, because surprised they had 2 empty chairs on their board, other issues.
Yeah, and you'd also mentioned we're all of a certain age, right? I don't go on Facebook a lot, but I have a group from high school that's my class, and
And they're all older than you, right? You're looking
right,
at
they're
them.
out. Man, they all look old, right? But
You
occasionally
guys
it's
look
like,
hard.
the only news you have there is, hey, it's the X number of party, and I don't go back for it. But anyway, we're having the party this time, or sad news to report, so and Joe,
Oh, there you
passed
go.
away. So and so passed away, right? So the circle of, so you have boards that are falling. Maybe you got a 5-member board. You got 2 70-year-olds, 2 60-year-olds, and the young guy who's 59, right? And
Right. Brand new, the baby.
a baby. Yeah, they've been grooming him since he was on the supervisory committee 15 years ago.
Right.
And you sit down as a group like that and say, you need to have the succession planning for your board. How do you tackle that? What kind of nuances and challenges do they have? How do you get them to understand, They need some new. Obviously, they go, yeah, we probably could get somebody, but this is how we're the only ones who want to do it. They think
Well,
sometimes.
oh my gosh. Let's lead off. Let's lead off with that. So that's what I hear. I hear this over and over again. And I've done a number of different workshops, a number of different projects because I speak on, I call the topic building a deeper bench. So succession planning just ran right into my arms, so to speak. And now I get a lot of calls to help people out with this. And and again, like I said, a number of credit unions, in addition to being outside general counsel, are different from being outside general counsel, where they're asking me about compliance issues or things like that. Now the board has me as their counsel. Now they're asking me about stuff like this. And it's universally starts out with, we can't find volunteers. And I said, and I typically try to say, and you know me, I'm a relatively plain spoken person. I try to guard back my observation of what I consider to be the obvious. But what I say to them is, you need to look harder. You need to look harder. And that's the, they're out there. We're a nation of 335 million people. You yourselves have 100,000 population, right? You have new members coming in every month. So you need to look harder, but you hit it. And I saw recently, and you'll love this. It's not a bubble graph, right? But it's a graph, and it showed, it had two data points, right? One line was my age, right? And it showed it going up. And above that is a line that says my definition of old. It's
Right.
above it and also going up.
Right.
But in any group, right? And the types of people that would become members of the board, and I'm a recovering credit union volunteer myself. I spent 10 years on the supervisory committee, but these are people that are likely to volunteer for other things in their community, things at their church, things in the business world. And as you get older, and I found this with myself, and I've just not that long ago crossed over the magic 60. But as you get older, the group of people that you regularly interact with shrinks.
Sure.
And now, instead of going into work every day, and I experienced this when I left from being a credit union executive to having my own firm that consisted of all two people that work remotely, all these people that are your friends and compatriots, suddenly that's gone. And now, so now who are you around every day? So when you think about who would be really good about this, you're not working anymore. You may not be involved in any of the community associations anymore. So maybe you're active at church and things like that. But the people that you hang out with are now tending to be your age and have the same reduced scope, if you will. And I often point out, you're right. That's not a great formula for finding new people. And then we'll add in, and we can add this as maybe a separate conversation topic, but then you start adding in the concept of diversity. And by diversity, first of all, I don't want to trigger anyone, but what I mean by simply diversity is different viewpoints. So it's going to be, it could be age, it could be sex, it could be race, it could be national origin, it could be, do you have a disability? Are you former military? Do you live in the community? Have you gotten a loan in the last 5 years? Do you know how to use an iPhone? It could be
Right.
any do your own business, and then we can start getting into all the nitty gritty. Ooh, we want an independent business owner. We want somebody that has IT experience. We want somebody to have accounting. So as you get all that, you're not going to develop that from a 5-person board that's been together and the newest person came on 5 years ago. You need a process, and that's what it is, not an event. You need a process that can inventory the community. And what contacts do you have? Are you community based? In which case, where's your community services board? Where is your Salvation Army? Do you have local colleges, high schools in the area? Where are the people that are really active? And from that, you're going to look at your succession plan. You're going to do an assessment. What are we looking for? And it's not about numbers. It's not about, oh my gosh, we are 45% Caucasian and 35% Hispanic, and the remaining is African American. So that's what we want the proportion to be. No, it's not going to require, it's going to inform. So how do you build a process that recognizes that in? Because from there, you've got to plug it into nominations. And I'm surprised. I'm like, oh, for succession planning, I'm like, all right, let's talk about nominations. What does that have to do with it? I'm like, because here's what the nominations, and we're gonna do a physical exercise here. So when these appear, just remind me, Mark, are we on camera?
We are.
Perfect. Fold your arms. Fold them. Just fold your arms in front of you. They look at you already. Got the parrot look.
Yep.
Now, heck with that. You got the regulator look. Okay.
That's right.
Now,
Yeah.
unfold them. Listen carefully. Act deliberately. Fold them the opposite way.
That's like the thumb exercise. I don't even know. I don't think I can.
And that's
Right?
just muscle memory, right?
Yeah.
So the bottom line is if we've been doing the same thing over and over again, we tend to do that. And
We
if we're going to change it, we have to be deliberate. And that's where it goes from paper to practice.
Makes sense. Yeah, we've always done it this way, right? Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
my gosh, the most hated words in, even more hated, by the way, than we're from the federal government and we're here
And
to
we're here to
help is
help. We're
this
here
is
to help.
always the way we've done it.
That's right.
Let me also just say that because you mentioned strategic planning with the NCUA and working with my wife, Diane Reed, the CU doctor, we do some strategic planning. And it is just fascinating to tell a group and have them have the aha moment and say, listen, if you had a new voice at the table, and I'm sure we'll get to this, but they could be an advisory committee member, they could be a supervisor, just another voice in the room, somebody that says, why do we do it that way? And suddenly everybody at the table looks around and they're like, you know what? That's a great point. I have
We
no idea why we do it
we
that way.
think NCUA told us that 15 exams ago, and
Well, that's exactly right. Good luck finding it in writing. Yeah.
right? Yeah, and we'll change it. We'll change it when they tell us they have to. And oh, by the way, on succession planning, now you have to because there's a
Right. That's
regulation.
exactly right. There you
There's a,
go. There
here
you
we go.
go.
And on the diversity thing, there's a book I make, the title of which I love, Wisdom of Crowds, and
Oh,
it's
yeah.
it's about the diversity of thought, and you need to bring different people to the table to get to the best answer. And in the preface of that book, that it's in England and it's a town fair and
The cow.
the cow, right? Yeah,
Guess the weight of the cow.
you
It's
guess the
brilliant. Go
cow.
ahead. Go ahead and
Yeah,
say it.
you guess the weight of the cow, and you win. If you get it right, you win. You
I
win
think you
the cow,
won the
or you win
cow.
some. You win have part of the cow, or something like
Right.
that. But afterwards, they took all the slips of what people guessed, and they added them up and
Hundreds of them.
averaged them. And guess what? That was they nailed it on average because collectively the people knew. It's like going to the horse track and betting. They figure out who the favorite is, who the second is, and
Right.
who the third is, and over time it plays out. You're going to win if you pick the long shot occasionally, but if you pick the favorite, you're going to win more often.
That's
But that whole
exactly.
concept of bringing more to the table than it's been these six people, five people for forever.
Right.
And then we go out and find our friends and who happen to think like us. So
Because let's face it, that goes back into what I was saying before, what you were intimating. Our filters are this. Hey, guess what, Mark? I'm probably the only person that thinks this way, but I find myself more comfortable around people that are like me
right.
because everybody else agitates the heck out of me, right? So that's the way that works. And let me also throw this in because one of the barriers to change in this is not just this is always the way we've done it, but it's this. It's wait a second. Now you seem to be indicting me. I'm a great board member. Hey, young man, I've been doing this for 35 years. I've given everything. I've missed weddings. I came in here when I was sick as a dog. I used to do the books and all of that. And now you're saying I'm not good enough. I'm like, so, oh, no, there's no indictment of you. Thank you for your service. God bless you. That's how things work. What I'm saying is that there is a time and a season for everything. So you're great. What I'm saying is these new voices, that diversity of thought, people that can say, you know what, I just logged onto my Chase app and they came up with 3 balloon notes and said, oh, by the way, we see your car's coming up. We see that you have a certificate of deposit. We'd like to offer you something else. And we've done a quick soft pull of your credit report. And we've determined that you have at least one credit card with an interest rate over 11%. We can offer you one at 7. And what are we doing like that? And everybody else is, oh, I don't even have a credit card. And it's
Yeah.
just it's getting that new thought in there. And probably one of the things we should discuss is the different channels of doing this. And is there a way of doing it that doesn't go into the board and say, Mark, thank you for your 35 years of service. Get out of here.
Yeah, so let's pivot to that. What are the channels? You mentioned advisory boards. Do you suggest people have advisory boards or advisory floaters that learn the supervisory committee report?
Absolutely.
What's
So,
the
so
path? What's the path to building a
one of the things that just a couple of years ago, and first of all, the path is not the same for everybody. And it's not necessarily about size and complexity. It's about where you are from a governance perspective, where you are from a community perspective. But obviously, I'm a bylaws fan, right? I'm a governance freak, and I tell people the bylaws is that's their number one roadmap for governance. And I really liked the last a couple of changes from the NCUA. I love the fact that they added additional information about the advisory, and I love how they added additional information about director emeritus. Just as a reminder, the advisory board member is they have to pass all the background checks. They have to be bondable, right? Because they're going to have personal private information presented to them. But now it's it's an internship program. It's an unpaid internship for mostly an unpaid position. But now you can bring on these people and they have a chance to learn. Is this for me? And again, I have a bias for supervisory committee, but I will just say this. If you look at the bucket of skills for a supervisory committee, it is dramatically different from the bucket of skills for the board. And you could be the boy, talk about old time books. It's the Peter principle, right? In any given hierarchy, a person tends to rise up to their level of, shall we say, not producing well.
Right.
But the more channels that you have, the better. And then let's work in a few other things. So I'm a big fan of that.
Well,
provided they're onboarded.
But I'm thinking of the director emeritus. So let's say you got a board of 5, right? Each one's 20%. And I'm going to make a correlation to NCUA. NCUA is losing 22% of their staff. It's the 22% of their staff that have 30 years, 35 years, 25 years, and are eligible to either retire early under the.
That's a lot of knowledge, isn't it?
It's a lot of knowledge. But if you have a board of 5 and a guy or a lady who's been on that board for 25 years, and you just say, okay, we're going to put you out to pasture, that's 20% of your corporate knowledge at least, because they probably have more than 20% of the years.
Oh, that's exactly right. Let's just hit that one. It's a great point. So first of all, here's an easy one. I'm all about low-hanging fruit, right? So how about we increase the board size, right? And upsizing the board. Now, obviously, if you're a state chartered credit union, you're going to have different interactions with your state regulator. But for the most part, I will say almost universally, which is like almost exactly. So not all the time, but the vast majority of times, increasing your board size is never going to be a problem. Now, once you start downsizing, there could be some other issues. So let's say you're at 5, popping up to 7. So don't have the brain drain immediately. Put a few more people on there. And so that's another way to address it. And we want to be respectful of our volunteers. We want to honor them. And I've heard people make the jokes, oh, we'll name our training room after them, and that'll be that. Now we can do director emeritus, because let's go ahead and talk about some things. Let's bring this out, okay? You have a more mature board member that now this is one of the now few things that they're actively involved in. And they're not only actively, they're in charge. They're at the top of that pyramid, right? They are in charge of the one employee who's running a federally chartered or insured, for the most part, not always, obviously, credit union. And they get travel from that. They get camaraderie from that. They get a sense of purpose for that. And that's tough. So if you move them into a director emeritus, then you can offer, and I'll just say maybe I go a little bit over, but I typically offer them 1 term of travel, provided they come to the meetings and participate. I want to, and it's not, people say, oh, you're paying them off. I want to keep them in the camp because of what you mentioned, their knowledge and their experience. And I think that's a way to do it. Now, let's go back to that crossing of the hands. If your nominations policy consists of, we go to every incumbent, and if they want to run, we nominate them. If that's your nominations policy, first of all, you're absolutely wrong, right? You need a job description. It would be great if you had an assessment. And I'm a pretty simple guy. To be on the board, you need 4 things. Here's the 4 things you need to do, right? So you may want to put this on the Credit Union Examination Solutions pay site, right?
Yes.
Just cut me in for 80% and we're cool.
You got it.
Here's all I need. Ready? Show up. That's a big one.
It's a big one.
Be prepared. Read that board package. Ask questions as necessary. And by the way, when you ask questions, copy the whole rest of the board, right? So that everybody sees that communication channel. Show up. Be prepared. Participate. We remember the old joke of examiners would say, how active was the board? Let me tell you how active they are. They're this active. Right? Show up, be prepared, participate. And the final one, are you ready? Play well with others.
Right.
And that's it. And so you need a succession plan that's going to hopefully play well into that. And like advisory committee members, that's great. So now you can see, are they showing up? Are they prepared? Are they participating? They can't vote, but they could participate. And the biggest thing, can they play well with others? Every board, and I may even ask people on my next session here, this volunteer conference, but if I were to look at a room of 200 people, that's what it was this morning, 200 people. And if I were to ask, how many of you have been on other boards or their leadership post in a volunteer, I'm going to guesstimate easily close to 2/3 of the people are going to raise their hand, because that's just it. It's the model. We like to help. We like to be involved. And eventually, if you're going to be involved, of course, I want to be on the board because I want my voice to count. And if you ask that same group of people, how many of you guys have either been driven to exit that opportunity or almost driven to exit that opportunity because there was somebody else there that was just such a jerk? And I'm going to guesstimate most of those hands are going to go up. And I think there are ways that we can design a process to help with succession that will help do that, as long as they move, right? As long as they go to step one, they'll have a map. They got to have a map, right? Because whenever the NCUA comes around again, or their state supervisory authorities come around, they'll have that map. The question is, are they going to take the first step on it?
Now, great point. You do well, play well with others. I moved once with NCUA because my boss didn't play well for others.
Oh, wow.
And I went halfway across the country for that reason. Worked out, but
everything happens for a reason. It wasn't easy when it happened, was it?
No, it wasn't easy when it happened, and I did a lot of soul searching relative to it, and I found a better boss on the West Coast, and then that positioned me for other situations. And those board members who left one board and are now on this board I learned from my good bosses and I learned from my bad bosses.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, as the good book says, the dude upstairs, he can be helped with good things that happen or bad things, right? My wife has taught me a phrase, and we've only been together for 40 plus years, so I'm still trying to learn it. But the phrase is this: I used to always say, it is what it is. And I can still hear Diane's voice. Actually, from where I'm talking, I can see Diane, and she is lovely. It is what it is, but it becomes what we make of it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And so there are ways that you can look. You want to avoid the one-hit wonder. And this is the same way if you were career pathing a teller to show them how to become a teller supervisor, and then an assistant branch manager, and then a loan officer and a branch manager to VP of lending, right? You're going to do some of these same things. But you also have the person that comes in that says, oh, I've been a teller for a month. I'm ready to be the CEO now. So you got to say, well, here's the plan. Here's what it looks like.
Here's the career ladder, and you can have that career ladder for the volunteers as well as the staff in the credit union.
I seem to recall many discussions in the NCUA always trying to make sure that was clear. If you want to go, here's what you need to pack.
Right? Yeah. What are my opportunities? How do I get there? Et cetera, et cetera. So what have we missed, David? You've got your syllabus for your presentation. What topics have we not touched as it relates to
so I guess let's talk about this. So when I talk about that first step, what is that first step? Because we have to counter, hey, we've tried to get new volunteers before. Remember that time we got that one volunteer? How long ago was that? I don't know. Let's face it, the older you get, everything is, you're thinking it was 3 years, and somebody says, no, that was 12 years ago. So one of the things is give them, and I try to do this if I work with an individual credit union or even in my trainings. And again, I just onboarded a new credit union as a board counsel, where they want me to talk about this. But I'm like, all right, let's just look at what you could do. Where are the available volunteers? Okay, isn't that question informed by what are you looking for? You don't want to just put on a bunch of 23-year-old people, right? So now you're going to have all that. And you're going to help. That's going to be in the plan. So now, how do we get to them? And another risk is, and we're not saying everything's wrong about it, but you want to get them through multiple doors. You want to get them through the tap on the shoulder from the board. Maybe the CEO mentioned somebody. Maybe another employee mentioned somebody. Any number of things. I'll tell this story. One of my favorite stories on identification and acquisition of new volunteers was I was emceeing a very large supervisory committee and internal audit conference by America's credit unions. And somebody said, well, I'll tell you how we get new members of the supervisory committee. I said, do tell, because this applies to them as well. Absolutely. And they said almost every year at the annual meeting, somebody will get up and say, oh, yeah, I was looking at page 2 Footnote 3. And here's what I want to know. What are these other losses that you've considered? And what are you trying to hide? And what we do is that stick in the mud right there, we say, hey, you know what? We're going to get you that information. And why don't we do it over lunch? Because I want to tell you about opportunities on the supervisory committee. So that's one. Let's start with some simple things. We know that according to everybody's bylaws, they have to advertise for positions X number of days prior to the annual meeting, right? Let's call it 120 days. And they have to get a nominations committee. They have to do this. They have to have the slate in. And then they have to give an opportunity for people to petition if that's what they want to. So all of that is there, right? And most everybody, I don't know how many of these I prepared an Excel spreadsheet that you just put the number in. I don't know if you've ever used Excel, Mark. It's a really good program. You should look into that.
One of my favorites.
And pivot table. And so beyond that, how about we just, you know what? Keep the ad out there. Keep it out there 12 months out of the year. Whoa, what's that going to do? What it's going to do is it's going to open a door. Maybe you get nobody, maybe you get 10 people. Maybe you put advertisements in the newsletters of your big community organizations. Maybe you ping people you're already working with. Maybe you have a great relationship with the HR person of the employer that used to be your primary seg. All of these people you're going to identify, and then you're going to reach out. And what are you going to give them? You're going to give them a job description. This is what we're looking for. And then, ready? You need to have a process to accept that. So now you're going to have, so let's say you have just a quick application or whatever it is. Somebody's going to look at that. You're going to confirm receipt of it and then interview where appropriate. And let's face it, we've had situations before where you've had seemingly very qualified people that go very public that says, hey, wait a second, we applied for a volunteer position and nobody even called us back.
Right.
And then you go back and look, and they've been nominating the same people that were up for years and years. And maybe there's a reason for that. They should have at least contacted those people. Yeah. So you're going to create that process. You're going to know what you want. You're going to put it out there any number of places. Put it in the branch for the people that come in there. Have it come up as a pop-up. Once somebody hits, just pick weird number, 25 transactions in a month, boom, it pops up. Have you considered this? Hit this link. Send out a text to people. E-sign is great. And then we go back into the process. Oh, we only have 5 seats. All right, push it up to, don't push it up to 12. Of course, it would be 12, be 13. Go 2 extra seats. Create the advisory committees. And with each one of those, here's what we expect of you. And then you may be able to bring on some people. Oh, but a lot of those people, what was it Jefferson said? How much time do we waste reacting to affronts that are only in our mind, have never actually occurred?
Mark Twain, I've had some horrific experiences in my life, some of which actually happened, right?
Oh, I love that. Oh my God. Yeah, Mark Twain, don't get me started. So those are just some ideas of how to do it. And I have mentioned some things that probably I have some very valenced ideas. I like some things, I don't like other things. Yep. And I don't mean to say that there's any single wrong thing. But let's go back to the CEO and helping to identify. They're active in the community. They're part of other organizations that can help. The issue is that if you have the CEO naming everybody, you know, I've literally had people say, "Oh yeah, I've met the nominations committee. It's the CEO," or the CEO says I could do this, or says I could do that one. Or, hey, I've known some supervisory committees where there'll be maybe an independent mind and a couple neighbors of the CEO. And that's just not how the system was designed to work.
And they could be perfectly qualified. It could be a situation where they'll question the CEO, but it gives the perception that you're not looking for a diverse pool, that you're not looking for
maybe you're looking for this.
Yeah,
and that's a great point.
Right. When do I vote yes? So exactly.
Right. Could be very well qualified people, but hey, if they're drinking eggnog in the garage, they may have a tendency to talk about things.
Very good. If there's one other thing I should have asked you that I didn't, David, what would that be on this topic? Did we hit it all?
We certainly hit it. So maybe this question. So what's the biggest thing that a credit union needs to overcome to ensure success? I would go back to, I'm not sure who the quotation is. I'm sure you know. We've met the enemy and they are us. And the biggest thing is that this is always the way we've done it. And to take ownership of it, to recognize that change may be a little bit painful, right? I'm not a big change person. We recently moved the coffee maker in our kitchen, and I'm still a little emotionally fragile from that decision. But that's
Yeah.
part of the process of growing, that there are lots of options and overcome yourself, map it out. The succession plan, the requirement, January 2026, as you stated, gives a great opportunity to focus on this. So the question for them is, what's that first step? What happens next?
And if someone wants to reach out to you and is ready to take that first step, they've forgotten that this rule is in place in January, or they just want to talk to you about how we've got our plan, we think we've got it. They want to get in touch with you on how they might be able to make it better. What's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Email by far. I look at that all the time. Too much, as my wife would say. It's David at reedandjolly.com. And I think you'll give them that in other formats as well. But that's the best way.
Yes.
And I'm happy to help in any way that I can. I've probably made most mistakes possible in this area. So I'm ready to have other people avoid those landmines.
There you go. There you go. That's the scar tissue that doing things and making decisions creates. That's fantastic.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for your time. As always, a pleasure chatting with you.
Absolutely, my friend. Thank you so much, Mark. Take care and God bless you.
You got it. God bless you. And listeners, I want to thank you for listening. This is Mark Treichel signing off with Flying Colors.